Tech stocks are higher today after shifting messages from the Trump administration over the weekend. According to the latest developments, smartphones, computers, and other consumer electronics will be exempt from President Trump's reciprocal tariffs, but the tech products will face sector-specific levies in the near future. Joining us now, we've got Tom Forte, who is the Maxim Group Managing Director and Senior Consumer Internet Analyst. Tom, good to see you this morning. So how are you making sense of the tariffs on tech right now and who it's going to impact the most?
Yeah, so stepping back for a minute, I think we're in a very fluid situation. I think the strategy that President Trump is employing here is he's trying to reduce the trade deficit, he's trying to reduce the budget deficit, he's trying to bring some manufacturing back to the US. The challenge for everyone is to try to determine what does this look like on a near-term basis and what does this look like on a long-term basis. So I think that when it comes to Apple, Tim Cook has a wonderful relationship with President Trump, also has a wonderful relationship with President Xi. But it isn't clear to me at this point in time what the ultimate outcome for Apple will be. But I would almost view the exemption on smartphones as semi-permanent, meaning that I think that there is going to be some sort of exemption as it pertains to smartphones and things made out of China. And my overriding view is that the market's view of Apple's shares has been too negative, that the outcome may be less bad than feared, and this is an example of that.
So Tom, as you noted over the weekend, there was a little bit of whiplash, right? We had this reporting that the reciprocal tariffs were off for smartphones, computers, a lot of tech products, but then President Trump and Secretary Howard Lutnick saying sectoral tariffs are on and they're coming in the next month or two. Where does that net out for Apple? I hear you saying you think there's going to be a smartphone exemption, but did I misread President Trump's post talking about how nobody would be off the hook here? You still think there's going to be that exemption?
Yeah, so I'm glad you used the term whiplash. So as someone who's followed the industry since '96, I feel like I have whiplash and indigestion. I mean, it's a very challenging market right now. I think that one of the reasons, though, the market is so challenging is it's responding to every headline. And it's not thinking about what's beyond the headlines, what's the ultimate strategy here. And the ultimate strategy here is I think when we say tariffs, we really should say trade negotiations. This is a trade negotiation going on between US and China. It isn't clear to me what the ultimate trade deal might look like, but this is a negotiation. You've seen it on both sides. So you had the original tariff announcements by President Trump, you had retaliatory response by China, and there's been a bit of a back and forth. So I think that it's better to frame it as a trade negotiation rather than to look at each individual headline and assume that's the final outcome.
Tom, Apple was one of the names to actually lead lower and start off its trend lower to start off 2025. And as we're thinking about what the tariff implications have meant and the whipsaw type of action and the lack of clarity, is relief of it not being as bad as expected enough to get it back to all-time highs, or does there need to be some other major catalyst for the stock?
Yes, I think, Brad, what you're pointing to is that earlier this year, Apple's shares lost their momentum because the AI trade in Apple was muddied. So this expectation of an AI-led upgrade cycle for the iPhone hasn't really played out. So I would say that first, we're going to have to figure out how Apple's going to address this overweight to China. They're too dependent on China from a supply chain standpoint. And then for it to really regain its all-time highs, I think we're going to have to see that either the upgrade cycle is in place or just that Apple could continue to innovate so that 5 years from now, the smartphone will still represent half their revenue and it'll be a strong performing line for Apple.
And talk to me about your rating on Apple, because you sound pretty bullish, Tom, but you've still got a hold. What does it take to get you back to a buy?
Yeah, so I do have a hold rating and a $215 target. The challenge right now is to try to determine, as always, what is the appropriate multiple to pay for shares of Apple given the current market environment. Our $215 target has a 28 times multiple. So for me to get bullish, I would have to see a situation where I felt like the market had overreacted, sold off shares Apple too significantly, and that the sentiment was too negative, even with the challenges in China and then longer term, the challenges on the overdependence on the iPhone.
Tom, I know that you've kind of evaluated as well some of the trends that are showing up, and IDC saying that worldwide smartphone market, it's forecasted to grow by 2.3% in 2025, but it's not led by Apple iOS or Apple operating software or that ecosystem. It's Android growth in China and the US that's anticipated to really drive that. So what does Apple need to do, and who are some of the other competitors that we're seeing continue to be able to take share at this moment, making it more difficult for Apple and their pricing power as well?
So within China, Huawei is certainly doing much better than it's been doing in a long time. You saw that in a 10% decline in Apple's revenue in China. That was influenced by the local smartphone manufacturers there, including Huawei. Samsung's doing well as well. I appreciate your comments on Android. And I think that the challenge here for Apple is that it needs to continue to find reasons for consumers to buy their smartphones. And I think that, clearly it's not AI, but what if it's form factor? What if a foldable iPhone ends up being, the stimulant or things of that nature?
No,
so I think that
I don't want a
sometimes we
foldable
get too hung
iPhone,
up
Tom.
on AI.
I don't want a foldable iPhone, Tom. I don't know if it's just me or if I'm just, this is like my
You don't
old...
want a larger screen, Brad?
This
so
is-
ultimately, it'd be a smaller in your pocket, but a bigger screen to enjoy.
So I could watch
Think of it
Rory
that
win the
way.
Masters on that when I'm on the go. Yeah, totally. All right. But this is one of my grandpa on the porch type moments for sure. Maybe I'll come off of it at some point. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome. Thanks, Brad.